Ready? The MasterCard is 5405 0170 4690. I'm sorry, 4690. April 2022. 951. Is 300 capital F.
Hi, I'm not getting any audio.
And neither am I. I'm not sure the meeting has started yet.
Oh, okay. I'm in
But
a
I'm wondering,
panic here.
Eric, if you can hear us, can you let us know whether we're in a holding pattern or missing something?
Yeah, I'm not getting any audio at all.
I'm hearing both of you. Can you hear me?
Hi, Sandy. I can hear you. But so maybe the meeting hasn't started.
I don't think it started because I heard them in the background for a second doing something, I
Oh.
think. So they probably just haven't started it yet. So
I'll tell you something. I'm too old for this electronic stuff. I push buttons and I'm telling you.
yeah, sometimes things just happen at the last second and you
I
never
know.
and they
I
don't
do-
quite,
I do nothing and all of a sudden it all leaves. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh
No. All right. Well, we'll sit tight.
yeah, we'll just sit and wait, I guess.
Yeah,
Or recording start. I think you're having a problem.
I think they are too.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
all right, I'm quieting down again.
Yeah, me too. I'm gonna say mute me. Okay. Hi, is everyone there? Hello?
This is Walt Woodward. I'm here.
I'm
Yeah,
here.
I'm not getting any picture. I'm getting a list of participants.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that's just what we're seeing right now. I think they must not have looped us into the main
Oh,
meeting.
oh,
There
no.
doesn't seem to be, the rest, the meeting room is not looped into the Zoom.
Right. And it's not
Um,
showing, the chairman even under participant.
Yeah, no, I think they're still having some kind of technical difficulty would be my guess.
Yeah,
I
I
think they're
hope, I mean,
struggling with that.
I hope we're not gonna miss all of it. Gosh,
No, I'm sure they'll figure it out. It's just, there's probably some, who knows what,
yeah, no
Mhm.
kidding.
So we'll just,
Yeah, I mean, how do you?
I'm sure we'll get phone calls if there's a
Yeah,
problem.
right. How do we send a message to Liz, though?
Well, actually, I can call Liz. I'll call Liz. All right.
Yes.
Let me get off of this and I'll do
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Liz,
We're
she
working
gets
on
the
the
brunt of
problem.
everything, doesn't she?
Buddy.
Eric Connery said he's working on the problem. They're having technical difficulties.
Okay. All right,
Yep, so
thank
no
you.
worries.
Thank you.
You're
Gosh.
welcome.
Oh,
Barbara, can you hear me okay? Hi, Barbara.
You're all good, buddy.
Thank you, David.
hi there. We just can't see anybody.
But can you hear me, Barbara?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, terrific. Thank
I
you.
want to.
Buddy, is that you?
Face. Gosh.
Oh, okay. All right. So we can hear you. We just can't see you.
Yeah.
Eric, you need to let me in, I think. Great, thanks.
Oh, there's Buddy. Okay.
Recording in progress.
There we go, sir. Sandy, you can see Buddy?
I can't see him, but I saw, yeah, he came in. His picture. There's Bill.
Oh,
Buddy,
see,
Buddy's showed up, just he doesn't show himself, but he's
I
on.
am not getting pictures at all.
No, there's no pictures because he's probably doesn't have his camera on, but
Oh.
he's on now. He's down below.
I don't
See where it
see
says
him.
Buddy?
If you look in the upper right
Yeah,
corner
yeah,
of
I
your
see
Zoom
Buddy, yep.
window, there's a view
There's
button,
Buddy.
and if you click on that, you have a
No, just I was trying to help him
speaker or
because he
gallery.
wanted to see him.
And if you click on gallery, you should
you okay?
see everyone.
All right.
I'm afraid to click anything. I'll lose the whole thing.
I'm with you.
Yeah, gosh.
Barbara, I think you just bought a new car through Amazon.
I know what? Oh my gosh. Buddy, this
Okay.
computer, you know, at my age, it's hard to learn all this, really. But I never have a problem with Zoom, but today, all I see is a list of names. That's it.
All right, let's get started here.
Okay. I'll mute myself.
Good morning. My name is, I'm getting feedback here, Eric. Does that mean I should turn off my?
Turn off your mic on your laptop.
We'll try it again.
To the speaker. Nope. On that one because that's your computer. So F1. How about this one? I'm just gonna connect from here. That should do it.
I'm going to suggest something, being the old guy that used to run the, the film strips in junior high, that you mute yourself on your personal Zoom and just speak through the room, buddy. And that should eliminate the problem.
Is that better now?
Yes.
Try that, buddy. See if that works.
Thank you, Bill. I think we're pretty good. Eric, we good? Thank you. Once again, my name is Buddy Altabella. I'm chairing this meeting of the Capital Preservation Restoration Commission. Before we begin, I'd like to call upon Mary Finnegan, one of our commission members.
I think before we begin the official meeting, it would be a really good idea if the committee observed a moment of silence for the victims of Sandy Hook, as today is the 9th anniversary of that massacre.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mary. We have a couple of housekeeping items first. The last meeting, I misspoke regarding Commissioner David Barkin's status. I had him listed as ex officio non-voting, and that turned out to be incorrect. So David Barkin is not only a valuable commission member, but he's also a voting member. The statute, if the legislature intended that his position as ex officio be non-voting, it would have been stated in the statute, and it is not. So I was mistaken, and I apologize to David for trying to write him out of the will. And we had a nice conversation about that, but once again, I'm sorry. And that let the record know and everybody else that Barbara Gordon did attend the invitational forum on the 18th of November. I believe I omitted her name. On the Zoom, it didn't have her name, I believe, but it did have her phone number, which I didn't recognize. Next item of business is welcome to our new member, Commissioner Catherine Austin. Catherine Austin is also a sitting senator and has been for a number of years. And she is filling in the place for Senator Crisco, an appointment by Senator Looney. And welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Kathy was here for the invitational meeting as well in November. And the attendance was actually terrific on that. And it was a very, very not only interesting, but informative invitational forum that we had. Participation was excellent. Questions were good. Anybody that watched for any part of the maybe 2 hours and 20 minutes certainly learned a lot about Connecticut and Connecticut history. And thanks to all the participants again. Thanks to you to Senator Austin for rounding up some of the speakers, as well as Walt Woodward, our Connecticut State historian and also a member of the commission. We have a roll call scheduled next. However, I think we don't need that really. We have 12 commission members. And we have a full slate of commissioners, 8 of which are present. And that would be, and 4 of which are present by Zoom. And those present by Zoom would be Barbara Gordon, David Barkin, Walt Woodward, and Sandy Navis. And the rest of us are here. So welcome aboard, everybody. And thank you very much. Before we start that, we need to approve the minutes of the September 22nd, 2021 meeting. They should have been in your packets. I know that there's been a lot of information transmitted to the commission members in the last several months. Reading wise, there's well in excess of 1,000 pages with click-throughs, maybe approaching now 2,000 pages. That has been a lot for everybody to absorb, but we thought it was important to try to get a balanced approach to this, to understand try to understand the historical context of this and come up with a recommendation to for Jim Tambor to take back to the person that asked him to ask us to give them a recommendation. Probably the most succinct way I could put it. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes from September meeting?
So moved.
Bill Morgan?
I think
Second,
we need a correction or an amendment where we would move Barbara Gordon from being absent to being present.
thank you.
I moved the minutes as amended.
Well, wait a second. We need,
For the September 22nd minutes, Barbara Gordon was not in attendance. She was excused. She was at the November 18th forum.
I think Barbara was engaged elsewhere in the building, giving a tour of the Capitol. So
Yes, I was.
So I'm not sure that you made the meeting, but I'm sure you were engaged in good work. As
I was actually in the governor's office introducing my granddaughter's boyfriend from Israel to the governor. So I thought that was kind of important.
so you admit you stood us up for the governor.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right, Barbara.
Okay,
So do we have a motion to approve the minutes by Commissioner Morgan, and do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah, Martin. Any additions, deletions? If not, we can vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
And I'll abstain because I wasn't a member back then.
Let the record reflect that Commissioner Austin was not a member at that time, and she would like to abstain, which I think is appropriate. Thank you, Senator. The commissioners have received, as I said, a lot of information. I mean, a really, really lot of information regarding especially the Mason statute. Our website is now a treasure trove of information that the commission has received that hasn't necessarily been made public. It's been turned into a compilation of many, many different things that you've received, the commissioners have received through our administrator, Liz Conroy. Thank you, Liz. And she's been working diligently with ITS to update our website. That would be the Capital Preservation and Restoration Commission website under documents, I believe. You will find this treasure trove. It's being updated almost daily these days. But we'd like to give out, especially Liz asked us to give out a shout out to the ITS group for helping Liz to put this together. As I said, it will continue to be updated as information comes in, if additional information comes in. And especially credit to Cheryl Smith, who helped Liz out enormously in putting all this together. And so thank you very much. The first item on our agenda is capital statuary, which is what we intend to take up first. And the statue that we're talking about, of course, is John Mason's statue. The invitational form, as I said earlier, was, I think, a fair assessment, given that it was balanced. We didn't try to salt the mine one way or the other. And I think we learned a lot of information on that meeting. As far as how I intend to proceed, or hopefully the commission will intend to proceed, it seems to me we have several options. We have before us a request for a recommendation on whether or not the John Mason statue remain in its place at the front of the Capitol, which faces the Bushnell Park. And hopefully we'll get that recommendation out today. It's certainly my intention. We have several options that we can explore regarding this. We have Commissioner Austin, who has been an advocate for doing something with the statute, shall we say, and I'll let her explain exactly what her recommendation would be. We have also our state historian commissioner, Walt Woodward, who has spoken eloquently, and not only at the forum, but at other meetings. This is, I think, the third meeting we've discussed this issue. And I believe Commissioner Woodward also has a recommendation as well that we'd like to hear. And also, there is also an option that the recommendation would be not to do anything, but just to leave the statute in its current place. Those are three options that I can think of at this point. If any of the commissioners have any other options they'd like to explore, I would entertain that. Or we could wait until after Senator Austin and then Dr. Woodward give their presentations. So we're rolling along. Senator Austin.
Thank you very much. Why don't you let Commissioner, the state historian go first, and then I'll respond to his recommendation so I can see what he is intending.
Dr. Woodward, Senator Austin is deferring to you. You're on, you're batting leadoff, so to speak.
Sure. Sure. Thank you very much, and good morning. I have to say I've been both informed and inspired by
Walt,
all of the information.
can we get a little more volume, please, Walt?
Oh, you sure can. Tell me when you've got enough. I can keep turning it up until, how's this?
A little bit more, maybe?
How we doing?
Terrific. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. What I was saying is I've been informed and inspired by all of the confirmation, all of the information that I've received and shared with people in the various venues in which we've talked about this thing. Over the course of these conversations, I've come to think that when we think about the Mason statue and the Capitol Statuary in general, we have both a great need and a great opportunity. And to that end, I have a recommendation that is both about the Mason statue and is a bit more expansive. So with your permission, what I'd like to say is that my recommendation would be that the Mason statue remains on the Capitol, but that a task force be created that would be charged with accomplishing three things. The first it would be charged with developing an appropriately contextualized interpretation of both the Mason statue as well as all the statuary in, on, and around the Capitol. At the same time, the task force would consider the addition of new statuary to more accurately reflect the long history of Connecticut and all its people. And the third part of that recommendation is that the task force would develop an educational program so that this new interpretation would be fully embedded into the Capitol experience, whether you experience the Capitol as the governor, a legislator, as a citizen of the state, or as a visitor. If the state capitol is going to be, as the builders intended, a history book for the state of Connecticut, perhaps our most important history book, then we should make sure that that history is clear, accurately contextualized, and meaningful. And I believe this task force, if it does its job well, could accomplish all three of those. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Woodward. Are there any questions or additions for Dr. Woodward? Commissioner Bill Morgan. Bill?
Well, typically legislative task forces are made up by appointment from the legislative leaders and governors. And I'm just interested in more of a final group based on the fact that there are a subcommittee or a task force formed by this committee. I think we should I think we should specify who you would believe would be helpful, such as people from the indigenous tribes, the current museums and historians from the tribes, or are we also looking to incorporate information from such as the Connecticut Historic Society and other groups that you feel might be able to supply you with some good opportunities for new statues?
You know, I think this is an opportunity to engage both the legislators and the history community and the constituent groups, all of whom have an interest in the history that's portrayed on the Capitol, in an extended and important conversation. So, it would have the indigenous tribes, it would have lineage groups, it would have the historical societies, it would have professional historians or representatives from all of these that, would really work together to create these contextualized interpretations. In a way, I can't think of a better time to do this than now. We are moving toward the 400th anniversary of the founding of the Connecticut colony, and this I think is a moment where we can use the central point of government to tell this story in a new and really important way while we engage the entire citizenry and the government in the creation of this story. So, Bill, I think you're absolutely right. It needs to have more than just legislators, but at the same time, I think government officials need to be closely involved in this process.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments regarding Dr. Woodward's recommendation? If not, Senator Ross.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate taking everybody's time here today on this. I listened to, and I have talked to many people on this committee, although I apparently had the wrong number for Mary. But so I have to say that I have been working on this issue for a number of years. This is not a fly-by-night issue, something that came, and I've talked to legislative leaders going back to when Senator Fasano and Representative Arasimowicz were in the legislature to talk about the removal of the John Mason statue. And I've looked at it every which way, listened intently to what everybody had to say. And I live in Eastern Connecticut, where 4 of the state recognized tribes, 2 of which are also federally recognized, reside, 2 directly in my district, both the Mashantuckets and the Mohegans. I've worked with all 5 state recognized tribes to get them recognition to correct what has been years and years of decades long disregard of the role they played in Connecticut before Connecticut was thought about as Connecticut. And listen to what people had to say relative to the history of Connecticut. As a matter of fact, I went out to the Indian Affairs Institute in Washington, Connecticut, to talk to folks out there. And they have a picture there that shows a rendition of what happened at the Pequot Massacre. And it showed women and children trying to escape that were set on fire, essentially burned alive. And I asked one of the curators out there what her thoughts were of Connecticut's history of our Native American communities, the first peoples of Connecticut, first peoples of this country before we were anywhere near thought about as Connecticut. And she said the one statement that has most impacted me, that the history of Connecticut is told by those who came in on the boats, never told from those who are on the shore, who are here. who were always here, who had been here for centuries and centuries, had well-established governments, had well-established religions, had well-established relationships, and thought differently of owning land. They thought of women as a concrete part of government. They were not subservient, and were not understanding of the ways that colonists thought of government, thought of women, thought of religion, and thought of owning land. It was not in their way of looking at the world that someone could own property, that someone could own people. They did not have that same thought process that came of the colonists when they came over. And so I just want to lay that as sort of what I had, how I came about of my thought process of the Native American communities, and why do I think that they've been disregarded. So for years we have had the John Mason statue, which was not an original piece of the building. Let's just say that it was never an original piece of the building. As a matter of fact, it didn't come here until 1910. So it should not ever hurt the building itself. It just was never made as part of the building. And it was actually moved around in the niche because people thought it was wrongly positioned. And when these communities come, they've often had treaties with the Connecticut colony and Connecticut itself, and their treaties and agreements with state government have long been disregarded and never thought of as, as real, and as quite frankly have often been thought of as a mere piece of paper, not holding any real way of enforcement by the Native American community. They most recently, I've been in conversations with the tribes, the tribal nations, relative to correcting some of these ills, and they said, why would this be any different? Why would I think that the state of Connecticut is going to honor any agreement at all? Because they never have. And that is directly reflective of John Mason. When those communities come here and they see somebody who essentially, by his own words, excuse me, essentially by his own words, burned alive hundreds of men, women, and elders. And you would say this is just a one-time event. But it ended up not being a one-time event. It ended up being the platform and the architecture of how we treated Native American communities from one end of this country to the other end. It is how we destroyed whole communities, their history. And I don't see how we can truthfully say, because that's been up there since 1910. It's now 2021, 111 years later, we say to people, we're going to actually put up what real history happened. I don't see that happening. I really don't. I see us as another statement that will not actually show justice served to people that we have essentially generation after generation. I think we're on the 5th or 6th generation of Native American communities that we have just disregarded. The only way to really look at the history is to remove the John Mason statue, put it at the State House or another museum at the choice of them, of anyone, but I think the State House makes the most sense. And actually put down what happened. Said that John Mason burned alive women and children, because that's what he did. And we know that not because somebody wrote it down or somebody said it. He wrote it in his own words. He said, we burned them alive, and he advocated for that. Chief Malerba said, Uncas proclaimed then that it was too much. Their oral history has always said that that is too much. Even though the Mohegans fought side by side with the English, they say that should not have happened. It was wrong. Should not have happened. We went even farther than that. John Mason was also the architect of the Treaty of Hartford. And the Treaty of Hartford proclaims that the name Pequot is no longer to be used. And we know in Eastern Connecticut that that happened because the Thames River was the Pequot River until the Pequot War. Is now the Thames River because the name Pequot was outlawed. And what else do we know from John Mason? We knew that John Mason thought of the Native American communities as heathens, as godless, as having no religion, as having no thought process. We also said, why are they fighting for this country? Well, because it was their country. We came here. To not recognize that they were fighting for their peoples, without recognizing that, we say, well, geez, we don't understand why they were fighting. Should they have not acquiesced? Should they not have just given up? Should they not have said, you're wonderful people and we're going to take your Christian ways? I grew up Catholic. I still go to church every week. And will always continue to do so. But I recognize that other communities have beliefs that are near and dear to them, that are actual. And John Mason said that none of those were real, that none of those were right, that women should not be on an equal platform with men, but the Native American communities considered women to be on that equal platform. I appreciate everybody's commitment here. I recognize that each and every one of you have cared about this building. I tell you, I care about this building too. I care that every single constituent feels comfortable coming to this building. And neither the Eastern Pequots nor the Mashantuckets feel that this is a seat of a government that they can trust. This also transcends to the Golden Hill Pegussets, the Scaticoats, and the Mohegans. They'll come up with a recommendation. They'll be happy to sign on to a treaty, but they don't think that you're going to completely follow it. They've been too many times disregarded. I sat in a committee meeting one day, and when we were talking about a Native American issue, it came up and somebody of the committee said, well, we'll have the cavalry come and they'll take care of these people. And that was not considered to be offensive. The Native American community sitting in that meeting were offended. I sat in another committee meeting where someone said, you are only here to Chairman Butler because we allowed you to be here. That means to me that we are not recognizing this community at all. At all. Darlene, a Scotticoke tribal woman, said, history has only been told by those who came in on boats, not those who have been here on the shore. That is true. Most recently, there was a letter to the editor that said, if we really want to know who John Mason was, then just read his words. We must burn them, as he stepped into the wigwam, where he brought out a firebrand and putting it to the mats with which they were covered, set the wigwams on fire. They talked about cutting the hands off of people as they tried to escape. Should you get a chance, go to the Institute of Indian Affairs out in Washington, Connecticut. Look at the rendition of the Pequot War. And tell me or tell them that that does not frame your discussion here today. Take a ride to the Tantagwidgeon Museum in Montville and read the history there. And if you have a few days, go to the Mashantucket Museum, which will take probably a month to see everything that's there, as it's the largest museum in the country relative to the Native American communities. So I ask that people consider, with all due respect, that we remove John Mason finally from a glorified place, as statues do not tell history. They glorify the people that we want to glorify. And right now we glorify John Mason by having him on the Capitol. I point out that's Chief of Staff of the governor, when he was in school, worked to remove the name Mason from a building at the school where he is. And that name's been removed. John Mason is no longer on those buildings. And we finally recognize our Native American communities so that they get the respect that they deserve, the dignity with which they should be represented, and get accepted as full-blown citizens of this great state. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Austin. Dr. Woodward, any further remarks?
Sorry about that. I was trying to unmute. I'm moved by the passion of Senator Austin's remarks, and as a historian, as a historian who knows this period well, I would take issue with some fundamental points of it, but this doesn't seem to me to be a forum where we go back and forth on the historical facts. But there are real. You cannot deny that Mason burned the Pequot Fort, and that it was a horrific thing to do. There is no one will take that away. And to that extent, Senator Austin and the Native people who despise him for that have every reason in the world to do so. But as a historian, I know that that event was preceded by the killing of English men, the torture of English men by Pequots, by the killing of English women by Pequots that led to the precipitation of the war. This was a complex event. It is often presented as the case of an innocent, a completely innocent, peace-loving people who are assaulted by English invaders, when in fact the English were asked to come into Connecticut by the Sequin tribe in Hartford, who were trying to resist subjugation by the Pequots. I don't want to go play by play through the events of this, but I do want to say this story is much more complex than a good guys, bad guys interpretation. And regardless, with all of the passion that Senator Austin feels, historically there are difficulties with some of the fundamental reasons that she has presented for taking the Mason statue down. But the core fact that on that morning in 1637, Mason committed a horrific act against men, women, children, and Pequot warriors in the village cannot be escaped. It is true. It's just a much more complex story than a simple binary of good and bad will reflect. So that's all I have to say. I admire the passion with which Senator Austin made the case, and I also completely second the fact that the indigenous people of this state have, in the 300 plus years that followed, often been abused and mistreated by the state and its overseers. And I think that's also another thing that can't be denied. But I'll stop there, and that's my response.
Thank you, Dr. Woodward. So we have two recommendations so far that the commission may forward through Director Tamburo. Do we have any further comments? I understand we have some time-constrained commission members. Especially, I've just received a note that David Barkin has a time constraint. Is that correct, Commissioner Barkin?
Just a hard stop at 12:30. I have a hard stop. Yep. And
would you wish to comment at this time?
yes, I would.
Please do.
So I'm very interested in history. I'm very interested in early American history. I've been immersing myself in this whole COVID pandemic and doing a lot of reading, some original source reading, including, for instance, John Smith's diaries, and providing certain context that I just find fascinating. And unlike most history, it seems to indicate Jamestown is the first settlement. It really wasn't. It was Roanoke some years before that, of which those people seem to disappear without any trace. However, just some observations. I think that the Puritans seems that they weren't a particularly tolerant group of people. Seems ironic that their history as an oppressed and discriminated religious group would seem to indicate otherwise. I mean, Connecticut wasn't a particularly friendly place for many years. I think it was 1843 before Jews and Catholics were permitted to congregate within the state, which is just fascinating to me. But when we talk about this particular issue of statuary on the building, and I think people also know I'm particularly interested in historic preservation as an architect, that that the legislatures have a clear role in which statuary gets placed on the Capitol, that their opinion matters in terms of how the Capitol is adorned. Clearly, the other niches will be determined by a combination, I presume, of mostly of the, well, it's the legislators' building, so they get to choose. It's not even the executive branch that gets to choose. So their opinion matters. And we received a lot of support for removing the statue and placing it at the museum, the Old State House Museum. The thing that I haven't heard yet, and I'm not convinced by Senator Austin's comments because of put it at the State House or someplace else, is we need there is no authorization right now. There's inadequate authorization to remove the statute from the Capitol right now. I believe the Capitol budget authorized $15,000 last year. The management at the Capitol determined that the cost with proper rigging and so on to remove any statuary would be more in the range of $50,000 or $55,000, if I have the number correct. Providing for a proper setting at the Old State House would require additional funds. I'm not sure exactly how many, but we would certainly need to have an interpretive display created and the statue put in a certain context where we could where visitors to that museum could understand its place in history and the complex history that Dr. Woodward speaks about. I have no problem with a statue and the story of John Mason, given all that's been said, being explained in its difficult and complex narrative. And I think it should be. And I think in many ways, it's much more effective to have it in that environment than it is to have it 40, 50 feet above the air, looking out over Bushnell Park, where and a corresponding history somewhere in the Capitol that would be, passed by many, maybe it would be on a tour or something like that. So I just want to make sure if we take action, even if there's some action to remove the statue by the legislature, that whatever motion we take is accompanied by a recognition that there's inadequate funding, and just taking it down or saying we taking it down doesn't get us to where Dr. Woodward, well, not so much Dr. Woodward because he'd like to stay in place, but any type of interpretive display, even if it stays in place, we need money for that. We don't have money for that. I would hate to see money being taken away from the restoration of the Capitol to go to another need when there's already many identified needs that are long overdue in terms of deferred maintenance. So I will stop my comments there, but thank you very much for the opportunity to opine.
Thank you, Commissioner Barkin. Further from any commission members? Seems to me Mary Finnegan.
I wasn't really going to say much at all today, but a few of the comments brought things to mind. I've read 90% of the documentation, and one of the things I read I found interesting was that Skip Hayward, who was the former head of the Pequots for 23 years, when they were going to take the Mason statue down in Mystic, his quote was, "If you take it down, no one will remember what happened here." So you can see how complex these issues are. The Pequot Nation's former leader felt it should stay in that particular site. I'm not saying on the Capitol, but for those of us who are not historians, but who have studied the issues, I mean, we have to look at the fact that this was wartime. This was not today, this was during a war. And sometimes later on, you can downplay what one side did and you can mollify or whatever, or exacerbate what another side did. During one of his comments, Dr. Woodward said something about active remembering, not historical amnesia. And I think that this idea is incredibly complex as to what we do or don't do. I totally agree that there doesn't appear to be money to do what there is to do anyway. And if there was going to be money in the budget, it would have already been placed there. This got to us on a very, I'm not even sure really how it got here, but it's here. And it was a very circuitous route. It really wasn't in the budget. the bill didn't go anywhere. Then it wasn't in the budget. Then it was in the budget book, but it really isn't in the budget book. Then it was in the behind the budget, but it isn't there either. So now it's in the OFA book with a may, not a shall, of $15,000. And that's how we got here. We were ignored throughout the whole other piece of the process. But I think when it got stalemated and couldn't go any further, it was looked to us to kind of come up with, we're purely advisory. So whatever we do, keep it up, to keep it, take it down or whatever, the legislature has to accept that. We can't say take it down and down it comes. It has nothing to do with that. All we can do is say it's our recommendation that it come down. It's our recommendation that it stay, but I don't know how much weight, if any of that carries, because that's not our role. Our role is advisory. And I think we've put in hours and hours of complex learning and incredible interesting. But we have to remember that it was, again, a war, and times are very different during war. And we have John Mason's own words, but we also know that the Mohegans and the Narragansetts were fighting the Pequots, and the Mohegans and the Narragansetts were the people who suggested, or not suggested, but were instrumental in having the English come here. So I think as commission members, I'm not exactly still sure what we ought to be doing, mind you. If anything, I think we've given it everything that we could possibly give it and more. And I'm still not sure what weight any of this carries, since we don't know who really asked us to do this, other than it's one person. And I think that we ought to seriously think about what we're doing, because we are advisory.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Bill Morgan.
I have to agree that we've asked repeatedly to get additional information. And my concern is that once we start down this road, that there's going to be multitude of other statutes and other historians and other concerns coming out. So at this point, I'm going to offer the third recommendation, which is to do nothing until we get either a legislative bill or direct legislative intent by the leaders of the Legislative Management Committee on what the outline of the question is. Is the question remove the John Mason statue? Is the question, how do we incorporate our indigenous people into the history of the state capitol? And once we get that question, and at that point, our committee responsibilities are to recommend if there's statutes to be put up. And I would suggest that Dr. Woodward's point about forming a committee to recommend any new statuary could be incorporated and take that next step. But I think right now we don't have a direct connection to a hypothetical situation in the back of the budget, and it appears that it's the tail wagging the dog, and I'm afraid of that. We need to have a clear-cut issue. Do we take the statute down? Do we leave the statute? Come from the legislative leadership, the Joint Committee on Legislative Management, and then we can respond. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's the third option.
Thank you very much, Bill. Any other, well, first time speakers or? Senator, Commissioner Austin.
Thank you very much. So again, I've talked to a lot of people on the committee and appreciate everybody's comments on what they have made. There's a couple of things that I'd like to sort of clarify. And I did some research based on this commission's conversation in both June and September. And Attorney General Blumenthal had an opinion, which I sent to the chairman, Chairman Altobello, said that mentioning something in appropriations and then on the floor makes it part of the budget. It makes it part of the discussion. I did also originally send a bill into the legislative committee, legislative management committee, who haven't really met in a number of years, and they did not meet. So the bill didn't get heard there. It ended up being transferred over to the budget. And so that is considered as part of the budget, according to the Attorney General, in his opinion that he wrote based on, I think it was a 1999, 2009, thank you, issue. Very similar to what we had here. It was not the same issue, obviously, but very similar to what we had here. So that piece made it a part of the budget according to his analysis. There may be other opinions out there, but I don't know them. Because actually I do listen to what people say and then go back and research it to see where we are. And in all my comments, I've never said that that the situation was not a warlike situation. And I'm a Vietnam era veteran. I understand what happens in wars. I understand what happens. I served overseas. I understand that. I am not negating what happens in wars. I also know that when people step beyond the confines of what we as a country have decided what wars are, that this went well beyond that. This particular action went well beyond that. I do appreciate what Mary said relative to this being an advisory committee, and I'm not certain that Walt Woodward has the ability, or this committee has the ability to set up a task force. I don't think we do. You know, I think that that's something that, while nice, I don't think that we have the authority to do. And I've never said that the Pequots were not a fierce tribe. They were. That's well proven by history. This was different. This was different. This was an established an architect, the architectural planning of how we handled Native American communities across this great country. And that's something that I think is different. That being said, I appreciate what Commissioner Morgan has said relative to what is the actual ask of this committee. What is that ask? And I don't see anything in writing relative to what that ask is. And I think that that makes it a little bit hard for us to all assume what that ask is. I don't know. I don't know. I have not seen it in writing either. So do we say that we need more information? The legislative management, this recommendation would not even go to Mr. Tambora. It would go to the leaders of the legislative management committee, because that's who you respond to. Go ahead.
That's not my understanding.
It-
Jim, would you care to take a crack at this? We spent 2 meetings trying to parse out. It's my understanding that a chief of staff requested a recommendation regarding the statute. And if you could amplify that or correct me, we'd be appreciative.
No, that's correct, buddy. That I was asked by the chief of staff to get a recommendation from the commission as to whether or not we should remove this John Mason statute.
Thank you. So I think it's just that simple. Yeah, please proceed, Commissioner Austin.
So, well, that may be something that the chief of staff asked in the establishment of this committee, this commission. It says that you're advisory to the legislative management committee in the statute. So, I mean, if the chief of staff, if a chief of staff wants a recommendation, that leaves 3 other chiefs of staff that don't, or more, 4, 5 of them that don't want anything. So, I mean, relative to what the Commissioner Morgan has said, I don't know that we have a clear picture on where we should be or should not be yet.
Thank you. At previous meetings, I think it was the consensus that this commission would respond through Director Tamboro. Commissioner Flaherty, Brian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My words won't be able to add or detract from what was said at the public forum that was held or what's been said here by people I respect and opinions I respect. We're talking about history and the use of the state capitol as a teaching tool for our state's ongoing history. Personally, I'm swayed by Dr. Woodward's approach to teach and tell and learn the whole history here at the Capitol. But to Commissioner Morgan's point, we certainly don't have the ability to set that policy or to fund what that would entail. But I guess I'm swayed by saying we should develop a full history, use the current and future statuary, develop a program to complete the stories that need to be told. And it's very clear that the complete nature of the stories about whether it's John Mason or anyone else who's on the Capitol have yet to be told. But do them here. Do them at the Capitol, where history is continuing to be written, where stories continue to be told. And if this commission, which is advisory in nature, there's only one policymaker actually on this commission, perhaps, and again, I'm swayed by Dr. Woodward's approach. Perhaps what we do is we say, look, we considered 3 options and here they are. Because they're all well-informed and I think deeply held. But as for me, I believe the approach is to continue to use the Capitol as a tool and teach it and tell the real story and tell the whole story, perhaps for the first time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Hi, it's Barbara. I have a couple of questions. In the
Please proceed.
future, would there be any other statues of question? And 2, is there a pamphlet given to tourists? Of course, it wouldn't help for people who just look at it from the outside, explaining both sides of John Mason. I've never been so torn and trying to make an opinion as I am over this. I mean, as a member of the Jewish faith, I think, how would I feel if there was a statue of Hitler there? So there's an emotional part, there's a practical part. My feeling is if we really wanted them to remove it, we would get the funding somehow. But yes, you've got to teach history. You can't whitewash it. That's what's trying to be done right now. But on the other hand, you've got to educate and be sure that people don't look up and say, oh, look at all those heroes. So would there be another statue in question? You know, how far does it go? I'm really conflicted over this.
Thank you, Barbara. To try to answer your question about, is there currently a pamphlet regarding the Mason statute? I believe the answer to that is no. However,
No.
incorporating Dr. Woodward's approach that there would be more educational materials regarding not only John Mason, but also a better context of the Pequot War. The Pequot War was fought over 2 years, give or take. It encompassed soldiers from Massachusetts. It took place at Block Island. It took place in southeastern Connecticut, through Guilford and through New Haven, and the fight at the swamp in Fairfield, and into the Hudson Valley, and back again to Rhode Island over a number of years with many participants. The history of the participation in the Pequot Wars was incredible. A dozen different indigenous tribes Many lined up with the English, some lined up with the Pequot. And as Dr. Woodward mentioned, this wasn't a one-day event. This was an event that took place over many, many months and actually a couple of years. The immediately preceding the declaration of war, which was May 1st, 1637, was the raid on Wethersfield. And I know that we just celebrated our remembrance of the Pearl Harbor, and it was December 7th, and on December 8th, the Congress declared war. It was April 23rd was the raid on Wethersfield, and all the destruction that happened then, and the kidnapping of two daughters of a member of the Connecticut court. I don't know what the equivalent would be. It would be the governor's daughters or one of the 6 leadership's daughters. A week later, there was a declaration of war. The mustering out of men, of supplies, of firkins, of strong water, of all sorts of shot, and to send 90 people from Wethersfield, Hartford, and Windsor down to, in their minds, right the past wrongs. So, and then it continued onward and onward. The atrocities, as Dr. Woodward has mentioned before, are just phenomenal. There's been torture and flaying, and people were killed by sword, by flame, by arrow, spear, dismembered, hung in trees. The end of two of the sachems is actually grisly. I never knew why the area in Connecticut sachems had, how it got its name. It's terrible, and it culminated in an incredible document, the Treaty in Hartford, which is staggering when you read it, but it was part of the history and what the feelings were at the time. I said initially when we took this up, there isn't going to be a way for us to relitigate what happened back then. We can't call witnesses. We don't have written anything in writing from, let's say, any of the indigenous tribes. We do have some writings from English, and we still have writings from scholars, and we have even a recent architectural dig that's been done in sites all over Connecticut in different venues, because the Pequot War was so widespread and it involved so many different peoples from all over Connecticut. So I'd like to thank Barbara for your comments. We don't, as I said, I don't believe we have a pamphlet, but I think that's part of what Dr. Woodward is putting forward, whether or not somewhere on the grounds, whether it be indoors, outdoors, we should recognize that there were people here before the English settlers and the Dutch settlers, and they had historically, they had a great influence on who we are today, including the name of our state, Long Tidal River. So there is, I'll hold it up. Bob Harris had it right in the satchel as usual. The Connecticut State Capitol Statuary, and it does have a write-up on all the statues that are up there, and there is one, of course, on John Mason, was one of the founders of the town of Windsor. John Mason was born in England. He was a member of the gentry class, became a soldier in the British Army, fascinated by Henry Hudson's stories of life in America. Mason came to the colonies in 1632. In 1635, he was given the responsibility of protecting the colony from pirate marauding. Captain Mason in 1637 with Mohegan and Narragansett Indian allies defeated the main force of the Pequot Indians at Mystic. Thomas Hooker gave him the title of Chief of Militia. Very short, incomplete history, but I
Yeah,
hope
very, very incomplete. And that's what I mean. There's got to be something. I mean, I adore the Capitol. I have more pictures of the Capitol hanging on my walls than I think I do of my kids.
as to
But I didn't know the full history. So certainly, if we decide to leave it, that history has to be known, every bad part of it.
Thank you. Yes, I concur, ma'am.
Hey, buddy, it's Sandy.
Sandy Nafis, Commissioner.
How
have
are
the floor.
you? I just want to, I've been reading, as we all have for quite a while now, about all of this. And it is, as Barbara just said, it's such an emotional issue. In my personal opinion, I really do believe that statute should come down. The question more is, how does that get treated? And what David said today, you know, the old State House and what we've all talked about, another display, makes sense to me totally. What Walt Woodward has said, I think also makes sense. I did take a look at the list of all the different statues up there. There certainly are a few other people there that were not perfectly saint, but when you look at the time that they were, you know, living in, you certainly want to take that. Some of that has to be taken into consideration, but no one, not one of them, in my opinion, comes close to committing what, in my opinion, is genocide. And that's why I feel the way I do about the John Mason statue. However, I also understand fully that we have a process, and I'm not even clear, as Bill Morgan has said, what exactly we're supposed to be doing. I personally would support getting that statue.
Uh-oh, Sandy froze up. We will proceed to other commissioners' comments at this point. And if Eric can get Sandy unfrozen, we'd certainly like to have her back. I think she was about to say, I don't know, maybe E.F. Hutton was going to speak then or something. Anything else further from the commission? We're going to need Sandy back sooner than later, I believe. Appears we have three options in front of us. Perhaps Senator Austin, if you'd give a brief précis of your recommendation.
We haven't been in person in a while. So I believe that I would make the motion that we
Recommendation.
recommendation that we remove the John Mason statue, placing him at the old State House and having the appropriate context with that. I do point out relative to the budget that we lapse $5 million every year in legislative management. So, or more. And so I just point that out because the money is there to remove the statue and do the appropriate contextual nature of that. Just wanted to make sure that people know that that money is absolutely there to do that. And that's what I would recommend.
Thank you. And in a continuing review of the bidding, so forth, as if we were playing bridge here.
The RFP has been received back. There is an RFP that was put out on this process, and that has come back. It just hasn't been signed.
Thank you. We haven't been consulted or received or seen an RFP, as far as I know, but at this point, that's not important for our today's activities. Dr. Woodward, a brief explanation again?
As brief as I can make it, I would like the commission to recommend the creation of a task force that would be charged with three things. First, to develop an appropriately contextualized interpretation of the John Mason statute, as well as the other statuary, and that term writ large, on, and around the Capitol. Secondly, the task force would consider the addition of new statuary to more accurately reflect the long history of Connecticut and all of its people. And finally, the task force would develop an educational program to assure that this new interpretation would be fully embedded into the Capitol experience.
Thank you, Dr. Woodward. And Bill Morgan?
As much as I support Dr. Woodward's recommendations on a task force, I'm still a detailed person when it comes to what our charge is. And so based on that failure to have clear direction, I would ask that we do nothing until given further direction from the legislative management, executive board, the big six, and or any legislation the executive management committee may approve and forward to us. And that would involve also leaving the statute in place.
For the time being, I guess.
Yes.
I see. Thank you. Eric, do we have Sandy back with us?
If Sandy could unmute herself and just acknowledge she's there, we just can't see her.
Sandy, if you
I'm
can-
here. I'm here. Sorry, my Wi-Fi has been, of course, choosing today to be difficult. So, but I'm here.
You're back. Terrific. So you were able to hear the summaries of the
I
different-
missed Kathy's. I only caught part of hers.
Perhaps she could repeat it then for
Can
you.
you repeat it, Kath?
Sure. I'm making the recommendation that the John Mason statue be removed from the fifth niche in the state capitol and be placed in the old State House with an historical context to what happened.
Thank you.
All righty. Anything further? If not, once again, I suppose we've got a possibility of recommending three. I would hope that the commission members would associate themselves with one of the three options. And I think we'd have to do that by roll call. Our commission administrator, Liz, is ready with the pen and pencil. So let's roll. Liz?
We'll have option number one being to remove and relocate. I'll just state these briefly. Option two will be to leave in place, possibly install other statues. And option three is no action at this time until further direction is received. So as I call your name, if you could select option 1, 2, or 3.
Just to review then, option one would be the recommendation that came from Commissioner Austin. Option two would be the recommendation that came from Commissioner Woodward. And option three would be the recommendation that came from Commissioner Morgan. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Mr. Chairman?
Barbara?
No, it's me over here.
Sally?
I think voting in that manner is going to mean that a recommendation could be passed with less than a majority of the members. If people have to vote for one of three rather than one of two. I think we'll just get three sequences, but they may pass with less than a majority.
Sally, it was a little difficult to hear, but I think what you said was the result, the results of the polling might indicate that something less than a majority. Okay. Sure, it may end up 4-4-4, and that would be the recommendation of the commissioners. It may be 2-6-4. All three, I think, will move forward to the person that requested recommendations. Yes. I don't think it'd be fair to leave anything out, quite frankly, because we have so many viewpoints and strong ones and good ones. Administrator
Okay,
Conroy.
again, option 1, 2, or 3. Chairman Altabello,
Option 2.
David Barkin,
Option 3.
Mary Finnegan, Brian Flaherty,
Option 2.
Barbara Gordon,
Oh, wait, option 1.
Lorraine Gilmartin, Bob Harris,
Option 2.
Sally Martin, Bill Morgan,
Option 3.
Sandy Nafis,
Option 1.
Senator Austin,
Option 1.
Dr. Woodward.
Option 2.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Why don't we take a short break? Well, I've had requests for the results. Do we have a summary on the results?
Here is the summary. Option 1, voting yes, 3. Option 2, voting yes, 6. Option 3, voting yes, 3.
Thank you. And of course, for the record, so to speak, and everybody will have the opportunity to view this on CTN as it is documented, archived, and logged in, and it stays forever and ever in the Ethernet. So anybody would like to review whatever the recommendations were and why they were made, they're certainly free to do so. Senator Austin, before we take a short break, do you have any further comments?
No, I appreciate everybody's opinion on this, and I will continue to remove Captain Mason to his appropriate place over at the Old State House, where we can have an historical record of what actually happened.
Thank you very much. It is, I think I've got 12:34. How about we reconvene at 12:45? Thank you. Take a short break. the members would take their seats, and would the Zoomers please prepare themselves? We will be starting shortly.
I'm coming, buddy.
Agent Orange.
I gotta put my coat on.
Yep. It shows.
Want a chocolate chip cookie?
Yeah.
Billy's daughter made them and gave them to me, but I'm gonna share with you.
These are Morgan chocolate chip cookies?
Rory Morgan chocolate chip cookies, not Billy Morgan. I can't cook them that.
Thank
good,
you.
although they're the way I like them. Which is
They're-
crisp.
Oh, they got a little ginger in there, maybe?
Yep. Yes.
What?
A little bit of cinnamon and ginger. She does a little bit of those.
I only got 3 now.
Thank you.
I think I had 6. Bring them home. Let's hustle. I think Bob left because his ride was here. He had to go. Uh-oh, here comes trouble. Lorraine. Right here in River City.
Thank you very much. Again, we would like to restart the meeting after the recess. And we have a number of our usual items to go through. Eric, looks like you might be taking the lead on most of these items.
I'll do my best.
Thank you. So how about an update on capital closure due to the pandemic?
So the status has not changed, I believe, since the last meeting. The first floor of the Capitol is open to the public to come in. And the status is not, sorry, the status has not changed. The first floor of the Capitol is open to the public. They can come in, walk around. And at this point, we don't have any direction of what's going to happen as we go into the beginning of session. So.
Thank you. Yeah, there was a recent news article where I think the leadership was questioned about when and where, and that decision has not been made yet. So unless there are questions, we can move to the next item, which is well, there's nothing to report on tax credit legislation. So why don't we go right to active projects? Eric, would that be you?
That would be me again. The
you.
office light replacement, this is an ongoing process of when a lamp burns out in one of the Capitol offices, we replace all of the bulbs in that office with LEDs, as well as install motion sensors in the room. So that's ongoing. The east and west ley lights and skylights, this design is complete. It's with contracts to put together requests for proposal documents, working towards a installation date of the beginning of the summer of 22 in order to scaffold both sides and install 2 new skylights above, and then reinstall the ley lights, as well as they work their way down, they're going to repaint the top portion above the 4th floor.
Off the top of your head, how long has this taken so far?
A long time. I think we're at 3 or 4 years that they've been down, and then I believe it was 2 years before that we had them up there, but we had the tarps and netting underneath them.
When do you think the ice chunk came down and did the first damage? Was that
8 years ago?
8 years ago, yeah. Shows you how tricky dealing with an historic building can be. Yes.
Actually, that ice chunk only took out the skylight above. It did not take out the ley light. We're amazed that it didn't get damaged, but so. The leaks on the 5th floor, actually, there has been improvement. We're sort of keeping our fingers crossed. This is a situation of depending on how hard it's raining and which direction the wind is blowing. Sometimes we find new leaks, but it looks like we may have gotten the majority of these leaks. The Senate voting system, this is complete at this point. All of work has been completed. The display boards are in. That was the last step. They have been used by the Senate, I think, on 2 occasions. So, item E, the Senate and House audio system upgrades. We've been working with the engineers who are doing the design on this project. It is continuing. It's a little past the schedule that they had come up with, but a lot of research has gone into this at this point to try to really do it right this time. The clerks are involved in terms of making special requests, and so the engineers are working with them. Battle flag conservation. We will look to identify 2 or 3 more flags that we can do, and hopefully with available funding, we will get some more conserved. So, but all of them that we had out for conservation have been returned. The boiler replacement, this effectively is complete in that we've installed new boilers in the 5th floor to service the 5th floor and the atrium areas, the public areas. The next phase of this would be during the driveway replacement project, we will put piping in to tie the building into the hot and chilled water loop. Initially, we'll just use the hot water from the loop and then abandon remove the existing boilers. We do have 2 functioning boilers. They are actually run fairly efficiently. They're just very old. And based on all the studies that we did, the most cost-effective choice for us would be to go onto the hot water loop to heat the balance of the building. If there are any questions on that portion, I'll take them. Or it is there, and there's a place for us to connect to it, and they have verified that they have enough capacity to put us onto the system. That so it's a matter of when we do the driveway project, and our goal is to be able to do that in the summer of 2022. So we would put the piping in then, and then we can follow up by tying in. We attached the project checklist. There are a few minor updates on it, but most of the remaining work is tied to the exterior cleaning and restoration project, which is probably 2 or 3 years out of actually implementing it. So, and that's the next item on the list. So, we need to start again with a complete study and design. We can't use the 10-year-old design. So the condition has changed since then. We'll work towards 2 years, not 3. Yep. Sure. Yep. And then we did talk about the driveway and the paving. Again, that design work is nearing completion, and so we should be in a good position to do that work this summer. This project we're gonna move forward with in terms of getting the design completed on reinforcing the lantern area, and then we'll be able to put it out to bid. Blast mitigation continues to be on hold, although we're going to try. We're doing some work with the Capitol Police, and we will probably do 1 window as a trial with an internal blast window in that room, just so that people can see what it looks like. Which is, yes, it's part of their wish list in terms of, in this building, we're doing a number of upgrades to the security system. And so. Thank you. I think the QR code item was. That's basically on hold. We're working with the old State House staff and the League of Women Voters in terms of how to do a sort of a combined approach to this, and just hasn't moved very much. And Bill's capital wayfinding sign. How are we doing there? Couldn't find the numbers anywhere, and the wayfinding I looked.
I couldn't find the the actual digits anywhere other than the sign that's on the street that says this is the state capitol. And again, I think the big concern was for people like the deliveries that are not finding either the legislative office building because they don't have the number visible from Capitol Avenue and or the state capitol building itself. And I think something as simple as one of those blue state signs that say this is 210 Capitol Avenue at the intersection on the grass, would be sufficient, and it really wouldn't take away from the building. I'm just concerned that people are not finding the building, either building, and that could slow down emergency response and things like that. And did you ever look at the back of those wayfinder signs, Eric, and determine if the numbers are there?
The numbers are not on the back of the wayfinding signs. This is the back of the walk, don't walk signs that are scattered around the city. And they give directions to locations within the city. It was a wayfinding project that was done 6, 7, maybe more years ago. They list the walking distance and time, but they don't actually list, addresses. It lists state capitol with an arrow of how to get there. So they were geared towards walking, not driving. In terms of the deliveries, when we place orders, all of the purchase orders have delivery instructions on them with the numbers listed. So I think the biggest concern is how the public finds the buildings. So, and there's always been confusion about the legislative office building, less so about the Capitol.
Yes, I agree. But I did notice that by the crosswalk that leads from the state library to the state capitol, there is a silver box. And maybe we could find an artist to do 210 Capitol Avenue with a backdrop, and then that could become an actual street number sign if we can't find a street sign number system that's agreeable. I just don't think it's appropriate that we don't at least have the number someplace visible for the population that comes by this building to visit.
We'll continue to look at this, and I'll talk to the city in terms of what other signage they intend to put up on the wayfinding project. I know some just appear periodically, so around the city.
Eric, I
Yes.
think there may be a lot of other people in the building who are ordering things that are delivered, that may come via delivery that don't know all the numbers.
Okay.
I don't know. So I've been working on possibility of putting up 2 plaques, one for the Iraq-Afghanistan war. They would go in the concourse, and one for the Gulf War, which does not have any, any sort of anything there. We had 7 Connecticut residents die in the Gulf War, and so I've gotten prices on it. So now I'll be working with some military organizations and other people of friends of military folks that want to donate. And every legislator gave $20. We could put both of those 2 plaques up, which would be permanent plaques for the 2. It's $3,600, $1,800 each. So just sort of letting people know that that's something that's being worked on.
Yeah, I can't hear Buddy either for some reason.
Yeah, I'm not hearing him. I just texted it.
That's because
All right.
I have my mic off. I'm terribly sorry.
Ah, there he goes.
So we're about to set or try to set a date for our next meeting, which is generally speaking toward the end of March. And we're trying to determine, I know people will be on vacation, and we're trying to determine the best date so that people might be back in state. Or in Bill's case, he teaches Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so we'll try to make it a Tuesday, Thursday. So anybody out there in Zoom that's going to be has a planned vacation that is a bad.
I do. I'm leaving on the 20th of March to be gone to Europe. So for a while. So, but that's okay. If, everybody else can do it. I could try to Zoom from there.
You're leaving on the 20th?
Yes.
So if the 20th certainly would be a travel day for you, 21st, you'd probably be getting resettled somewhere.
Actually, I think I don't leave until later on the 20th. So if it was in the morning, I might be able to make it. So I think my flight's not till later. So I could probably do the morning of the 20th.
Yeah, which is a Sunday, I'm told, but
Oh,
all right. So that would bring us to the Thursday before.
It's a holy day of obligation for the Irish, St. Patrick's Day, the 17th.
Oh, the 17th is the high holy day, and I don't. For some of our members, I don't believe that's an option, is it? No. Why am I looking at Finnegan over here? Okay, so, and anybody else, Lorraine? All right. Should we, how about the Tuesday before St. Patrick's Day, the 15th? Beware the Ides of March. Well, we've been daring before. Why don't we give it a try? How about 11 o'clock on Tuesday, March 15th? Excellent. Thank you all. Any further comments?
I have a conflict on that Tuesday at 10. I'm giving a talk that morning. So
How long
sorry.
will you talk, Doctor?
People can take it for about 45 minutes, and then they have 15 minutes to tell me how much it hurt, and then I'm done. So between 10 and 11. So I probably could get to a Zoom shortly thereafter, or get to the meeting as long as it took the drive.
Terrific. So we'll shoot for the 15th, 11 a.m. Happy holidays to all. Thanks again for your participation. I know that the earlier issue we took up today took an enormous amount of time and effort, and it did not go unappreciated. Thank
I
you
just
all.
want to thank
Thank
Liz
you.
for all the information she's been sending us. She is terrific.
ditto, definitely.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Sandy. She has been, we've been keeping her busy, that's for sure.
For sure.
And she's learned a lot of new skills. And quite frankly, if I were in a position, I would recommend a very lofty raise. So.
Good
You
idea.
have a second on that.
Good idea.
Thanks again. If nothing else, we'll have this meeting adjourned.
Happy
So-
holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thanks, Brad.